Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
We are doctors,
weight management and metabolic health experts. We are the creators of My Metabolic Action Plan,
your two-step map to real health and weight loss,
which is in fact the name of this podcast.
Join my map now at rlmedicine.com.
Good morning, lovely friend. How are you today on this spectacular morning? I am joined, of course, with the effervescent Dr. Mary. How are you, lovely?
Very well today. I have just come off school holidays, which was fabulous and horrible at the same time. And now the kids are back at school and daycare. I'm back at work, and I overall am happy about it.
I think it's an interesting concept that you can have opposing ideas or opposing feelings at the same time, and they can both be correct.
Absolutely. You get more than one emotion can exist in there at once. And so I am both sad and relieved that school holidays are over, just as I was both happy and stressed that they were on.
Yes. Indeed. All right. So this week we are talking about whether low carb is still relevant. It's no longer the cool kid on the block. So we thought we'd break it down and go, both you and I have noticed that 5 years ago, low carb was sort of riding the peak. There were low carb Facebook groups, keto Facebook groups. They were everywhere. They were active. They had tens, if not hundreds of thousands of members. Diet Doctor was the king website. And all of a sudden, it's all fizzled. What's going on?
What is going on? Diet Doctor is potentially gone. It might be completely gone. I'm sure it's multifactorial, but we've just heard from in the community that it's gone bankrupt and it's just might fold entirely. And it's a really interesting time that we're in because low carb used to be cool. I remember it was cool. It was edgy. It was, it was a bit rebellious. There were doctors that were getting, impeached and pulled up by APRA for suggesting that lowering sugar and starch content in your diet might be good for people with type 2 diabetes. And there was a big uproar about, protecting our colleagues who were speaking out. And now it's really become quite accepted. So the evidence is quite clear. It's pretty much become mainstream, at least as a school of thought. And so it's not kind of edgy anymore. But also we've had the advent of GLP-1s, receptor agonist medications, your injectable weight loss medications, which have really transformed the landscape of weight loss and diabetes management and really have taken a lot away from the weight loss industry and the diet industry. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it is just what's happening. And it's different. It's changed. And yet you and I, Lucy, we still like to talk about low carb. I'm comfortable with not being cool. Like I don't feel a need to be cool. But
no.
Yeah, why do we think it's still relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great topic to talk about. And I think, it starts with history of food trends in general. Since Adam was a boy, if that's even a phrase, food trends, diet trends have come and gone. And, the initially low carb / ketogenic diet was the Atkins diet in the 90s. And then that went out of favor. And the Pritikin diet came in, which was sort of a high protein but low fat version. And over time, trends come and go. And humans are funny creatures. We are usually looking for the next magic trick, the next silver bullet, something that is going to make life easier, which on a superficial level, people go, oh, you're just looking for a quick fix. But actually, that's how engineering and innovation works.
That's why humans became civilized in the first time. That's like why we started domesticating animals and growing crops rather than trying to find our berries and hunting down the mammoth.
That's why we invented the wheel, so we're not dragging everything around. Like we have throughout the entire history, we have created solutions for problems. We've got to probably a critical threshold, though, where we've now created solutions and they're causing problems. So we've now created, food. We went from we don't want to hunt, we'll just keep our cows in a paddock, to, oh, we don't want to keep them in a paddock, we'll just put them in the fridge, to, oh, we don't want to actually have to get it out of the fridge and stick it in a pan, we'll just get Uber Eats to the door. So
that's right.
So our current society and the way we currently live means that health is not automatic. We have to be very proactive about it.
Yes, yes. So it's totally normal for us humans to want to chase that bright, shiny object. It's just hardwired into our psychology. And those deep fundamentals of human psychology have been set in our evolutionary past, and they really don't change very quickly. Also, our physiology has been set deep in our Paleolithic past, and that doesn't change very quickly either. So although diet trends may come and go and move in cycles, the basic fundamentals of our human physiology, it doesn't really. Our physiology, it's much the same as it was.
Yes, the difference being, I think, that our environment is changing so rapidly in the last 60, 70 years. It has changed phenomenally. Every day, almost, it's like, oh, there's another thing that's changed. And our physiology hasn't adapted to do that. So that things that served us well in previous times, the ability to store body fat,
our ability to actually sort of flick into insulin resistance when carbohydrates were abundant, back in Paleolithic times when there was lots of summer fruit available in summer and autumn. If we were able to sort of eat as much as we could of this, and if our bodies could then raise insulin and put us into a fat storing state, then this was really helpful because we could take advantage of this short-term boon of food to gain weight that could then help us through the relative scarcity of the winter and the spring. And so this ability is hardwired into us, and it was helpful. But now in our current food environment, we just live in a constant sort of metaphorical summer of highly processed, high carb foods available all the time, and having that hyperinsulinemia, that high insulin pushed up all the time, is terrible for our physiology when it's done over a long time.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't even think we need to go back to Paleolithic times. We just need to go back to pre-industrial, before electricity, before the refrigerator, which are only a few hundred years ago. It wasn't that long ago that we used to have to hunt, and even if we weren't hunting our food, we at least had to go out to a paddock. Like, we had to do so. To eat was energy intensive.
Yes.
And now to eat is not.
No. But our physiology was forged in this time when it was.
Yes. So diet trends, as we've talked about, the current diet trends are high protein, which is a trend, and that's fine. We think it's a good one. It is, co-opted by the processed food industry, who would like to slap high protein on everything. To ridiculous levels. There's now high protein on ice cream, high protein, lollies, everything, because people are aware that protein is helpful. What's unhelpful is when it comes packaged in a whole heap of garbages, High fibre is now the latest, fibre maxing, spelled with 2 X's, is the latest thing, because gut health is now trendy. Gut health is important, but it is now trendy. So everyone's talking about increasing your fibre could help with gut health. So therefore, there's high fibre on everything. And so low carb, no one's interested in that anymore. It's boring. Like, yesterday's news.
Totally, totally. However, it is still really helpful for our physiology in the right context. So what is helpful for pretty much every single human being on this planet would be for us to eat real food as close as possible to its natural state, the food that we were designed to eat, the food that our ancestors were hunting and gathering, as close as possible in our modern world. So just as little processing as possible. And yes, protein is really helpful for our metabolic health. So eating a higher protein real food diet And also reducing your sugars and starches is going to be useful for most people, especially people who've got problems with their metabolic health or have a weight loss goal. So real food, higher in protein, lower in sugar and starch, might not be trendy. Like, the food industry can't make a lot of money out of it, but it is helpful for our physiology. And this is, although it might not be cool, it's still what we firmly believe, that this is what most people should be aiming for most of the time. You don't need to be perfect, but it is going to be helpful for pretty much everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a little myth out there that low carb means low fiber. And yeah, sure, you can do a low carb, low fiber diet if you want to, but you don't have to. And you can certainly have high fiber if you want to. And look, I do think there's some merit in having increased fiber in your diet, but it has to be done the right way. Lots of people, again, looking at the processed food industry, they'll put really fermentable fibers, slap on high fiber, and people go, great, it's high fiber, but not understanding that that then is going to contribute to the fermentation in the gut in an excessive way. And so people end up with bloating, with pain, and it's all a bit so yeah, high fiber is great, but it doesn't require a bit of nuance.
That's right. You want to be getting your fibre from real food sources as much as possible. Have some delicious salads, have some fabulous veggies, have some lower starch, lower sugar fruit and veggies, and enjoy those. It's a great way.
Nuts and seeds have lots of fibre. You know, and my current favourite is edamame, which is a trend again at the moment. Somehow the edamame is having its moment in the spotlight, but it's great. It's a low carb, high protein, high fibre legume, essentially, which most legumes are reasonably high in carbs, but these ones aren't. So it's great.
Yeah, I'm an edamame fan. I ate them a lot while I was travelling around Sydney with the kids because they were just convenient, easy to get, easy to store, easy to eat.
Yeah, perfect. So low carb's definitely not trendy, but does that mean it doesn't work, Maz? Is that why it's not trendy? Because people go, I did it, didn't work.
Well, I think that there are like two main reasons why attempts at weight loss can fail. And the first one is like lack of adherence. So just not being able to stick to it. And the processed food industry, with all of its hyperpalatable processed foods that are really quite addictive in nature, make that hard. So that's one aspect. The other part is with caloric restriction. Particularly if we're not eating enough energy, especially if we're not eating enough protein, then we can get this metabolic adaptation where our metabolism can slow and sort of responds to that caloric restriction. And so that they're two common reasons why people do not succeed with any attempt at weight loss. And that could be anything, you know, calorie restriction. It could be any kind of dietary changes, bariatric surgery, even GLP-1s, if people choose to eventually come off them. The thing about low carb, though, is that you can get great metabolic improvement without restricting your calories. And so you can circumvent that metabolic adaptation if it's sort of done properly, which is one thing that I just love about this way of life, this lifestyle. Embracing your protein, embracing your real food, getting enough energy, you can keep your metabolism ticking along and you can still improve metabolic health. So I think adherence is hard in this world, in this high carb world of, you know, hyperpalatable foods everywhere being thrown at us. It is hard. Gosh, just paying for your petrol, you know, and all those shiny wrappers of the chocolates that you have to walk past or you have to get your toddler past just to pay for your petrol. Like, it's not easy out there.
No, the ultra processed food industry is predatory. It is relentless. And people can feel like they're weak-willed or hopeless. But often what they've done is their brain has said, no, we're not having this, like 25 times. And then on the 26th, when you're perhaps tired or there's some other extraneous factors, maybe it's stressed or hungry, the brain goes, come on, how about now? And so you may, and we like to call it, you know, you're vulnerable to the siren calls of the ultra processed food. And so you have some, and then people feel terrible, like guilt. So then they feel like they've buggered it up, that it's not working, that they can't do it. And so they give up.
Yeah. And I think that is a reality for a lot of people. And that is where the mindset strategies become really important. And it's not about berating yourself and not about thinking, oh, I buggered it up, I'm weak-willed, I can't do this. It's about just getting a toolkit so that if you know that, the shiny chocolate bars don't help you, they don't serve you, what can you do to, on your worst day when you're super tired, you've had a super crap day at work, you're running late, you're driving home, it's raining, you need to get petrol, your children are texting you, there's a billion things happening, and maybe you work through lunch, so you're hungry and you go and pay for your petrol. Like, just having strategies to help you deal with those situations can make it so much more sustainable.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, again, with the GLP-1 medications, which is also actually a bit of a misnomer because they're not all GLP-1s. Like, they really, I would love them to be renamed to incretin hormones, because that's really what they are. The newer versions have multi-hormones, so GIP as well. Anyway, whatever we want to call them, these metabolic hormone medications are peptides. If we want to be trendy, if we want to be trendy, because we're all about being trendy here.
I'm so cool.
Yeah, me too. For some people, the key that they can offer is the food noise. So if you've got a brain that is very food driven, that thinks about food a lot, and you've developed some skills, but maybe you just find that more often than not the food noise is overpowering, then the way I think about the GLP-1s is they can turn it down a bit. We actually don't want to turn it off. Like, people fear food noise, but actually food noise is part of human evolution as well, because it tells us to go and eat, and we need to eat to get our nutrition, to run our body and all of those sorts of things. But I think what it can do is turn it from perhaps being something that is extremely loud for some people, back down to just, a normal level, so that you can then use all of these tools that you've been taught or learned and implement the low carb, high protein, fibery food, and actually then do it. So the narrative that it's cheating, that it's the easy way out, that people are just doing this because they want to look good, there may be some parts of society that do that, but that's not the purpose of them, and it's not the people that we see.
Yeah, I think that is fair. And, we think that real food, higher protein, lower carb is useful for everyone, but it is especially useful for people who take GLP-1 receptor agonists, or these weight loss injectable medications as well, because it can help offset some of the quite significant risks with these medications that are lean muscle mass loss and people sort of losing their muscle. That is a potential side effect that needs to be addressed. You have to do your strength training and you need to eat your protein. And also nutrient deficiencies is another problem if people are just not able to eat enough. So eating really nutrient dense foods, like we're talking about here with real food, is also going to be really, really helpful. So this low carb real food is really good if you're not on GLP-1s, and it's also really good if you are on GLP-1s. Trendy or not, having that protein-centered real food, lower sugar, lower starch approach to most of your food without being perfect is going to be so helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And we were talking about a word before called synergistic. So synergistic means you've got A, you've got B, A plus B is like dynamite. So it makes A makes B better, B makes A better, as opposed to just them being individual.
More than the sum of their parts. Yeah.
Correct. Yes. And we know that, there's actually studies on this that look at lower carb can certainly improve the efficacy of a GLP-1 for many people, which mechanistically makes sense because we know that these medications, which were originally designed to manage blood glucose levels, like that was their original intent. They were diabetes medications. So we know that when and this is the critical point, when glucose is high, these medications will actually stimulate the pancreas to make insulin, which sounds like the opposite of what we want. And it kind of is, because we don't really want excess insulin. We want some insulin, obviously, because it's important, but we don't want excess, because excess insulin is the whole issue with the fat storage and all of the complications that come with high insulin. So if you eat low carb, then you automatically have lower blood glucose, no matter what. So therefore, there is no need for the pancreas to be stimulating insulin. But it also explains why people with type 2 diabetes will often see lower weight loss on these medications, because particularly if they're not low carb, then they will be just using it to manage their glucose levels, and glucose will be higher, so they're making insulin. The key is clearly to make low glucose for metabolic health and to protect your brain and your end organs and all of those things, but it doesn't then help with weight loss.
Yes, yes. I think that it's also interesting to note how the advent of these medications has affected the diet industry and perhaps where we stand on there, because I think it is undeniable that there has been a shift from endless commercial diets to medical prescription of these medications, and many people have made that shift, searching for the next diet, help with the diet, to now searching for these medications, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I don't, as long as it's done well. And that definitely there are aspects of the diet industry that we absolutely despise, and they're still running strong. You only have to just spend a few minutes on Instagram to know what we're talking about. 25-year-old influencers using their body to sell their programs. It's kind of annoying. But my take on it is that I am comfortable with GLP-1 receptor agonists and related medications reducing the market for various diets, especially for those shame-based programs that used to be so prevalent, as long as people are also addressing those fundamentals of good health. And these medications, as you mentioned, Lucy, can make that easier. By reducing that food noise, they can make it easier. But you really need to focus on that food quality, your muscle strength, your sleep, your stress, your circadian rhythms, just paying attention to that is so important, and your social connection. And the drugs can't do that for you. GLP-1 medications can be helpful, but they can't plan your meals and cook real food. They can't do strength training for you. They can't put you into bed on time. They can't regulate your nervous system. They can't go out and, help you see your friends and nurture those meaningful relationships, but they do have a role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes the way I explain it is that if your brain doesn't have as much food noise, it doesn't have as much worry, or it's not feeling threatened, because for some people, everything they go to, every social event they go to is worry for them. What food's going to be there? How am I going to manage it? I'm going to eat more than everyone else because I'm hungrier, because we know that insulin resistance dysregulates appetite. So they do have a lot of anxiety around it. There's then, guilt if they eat, guilt if they don't eat. What about if somebody comments? There's a lot of just, I guess, subconscious or subclinical anxiety, potentially fear around it. So imagining if we got to a place where you didn't have the food noise, where your appetite was regular, eating wasn't a fearful event, you could then take all of that energy, that brain energy, and put it into things like planning your exercise, planning your gym, I just said the gym word, yuck. But, planning whatever movement you're going to do.
Gyms can have a place. Gyms are fine.
Okay. I think that it's diverting that food noise into more useful thought space.
Yes, that's it. So would it be fair to say, Lucy, the key messages here are that the GLP-1 receptor agonists, they are powerful allies, but they don't replace the fundamentals, and that low carb might not be trendy, but a really well-formulated, protein-centric, lower sugar, lower starch approach that's based on real food is still highly relevant for our human physiology, for our metabolic health, and for our muscle, especially if it's combined with strength training and paying attention to your sleep, your stress, your circadian rhythms, your social connection. And that doing all of this is where we should be focusing our energy and focusing our attention, trendy or not, profitable or not. That's what humans who want to improve their health really need to be focusing on.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think, just to hammer the point home, if you're on a GLP-1, then low carb will be helpful because it keeps your insulin levels low, GLP-1 more effective, lower dose, yada, yada. If you're not on a GLP-1, you'll all know this, carbs make you hungry. It is easy to overeat carbs. You have them, a couple of hours later, it's like, oh, I'm hungry again. Whereas when they're reduced, and again, reduced doesn't mean none. Like to all the people that used to say, oh, what are you cutting out a whole food group for? We're not. But reducing your carbs means that you're prioritizing protein, adding some fat in. That automatically keeps you full. That's what we want. It's much easier to manage your food when you're full.
And we all want ease. Coming back to that fundamental human need, ease is what we want.
Indeed. So I'm happy to be an uncool low-carb kid. I am not interested in, things that are new and trendy. I'm happy to look at things always and look at new innovations and challenge what my thought processes are as a UMass, and we would encourage everybody to do that. But the fundamental thing is that if you're hyperinsulinemic, which is such a big word, or metabolically unwell, low carb is your friend.
Here, here.
Here, here. All right, friends. On that note, we will see you next week where we are talking about boring versus biohacking, which I love. And we'll be, again, a bit of myth busting. So we'll see you next week.
Bye now.
The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.